everyone, welcome to Watercolor Bible Journaling. I am Bonnie Krebs and I am here to show you how to stamp in this path into your Bible, this little watercolor painting, just with stamping and adding water. So super easy to do. I think you're going to really have fun doing this project. So we are going to need this set. This is called the Stone Path 5131. We're also going to need a few things from the flower set. So the large, little tiny flowers, the large one and the small one. And then in addition, this one right here, the lilies. And then in the foliage set, so the little tiny grass, this one right here, and the large grass. And we will be ready to start this project. So the first thing we're going to do is ink that path up. And we're going to use two colors. So we're going to use a dark blue. This is number 565. And then we're going to use this sepia color, 969. And we're going to start out by inking that in the sepia. So that's the brown color. And we're going to ink all of this up except for this little line here and here. That's the grass line. So we're going to use a different color with that. So use the side of your marker and just ink this all up. After that, we're going to do the blue. So this is that 565 blue. And I'm just inking the rocks. So all the stones on the path. And then we're going to come back onto these two lines right here and just get it with a green. So this is just one of the greens I have. This happens to be number 249. And then I'm going to stamp this kind of right in the center. I can see where my area is, and I have prepped my page, so I'm all ready to go on this. And I think I will stamp it about here. That's pretty much right in the middle of my page. So now the next step is to pull the color out of the lines. And we're going to do that with a brush. So we're going to dip our brush in water and pinch it off so that we don't have too much water. And we're just going to kind of make our way along here. So when you pull the color from the lines, if you kind of follow that lines, you'll sort of create a ridge here, and you can see how that pops that stone up. So just kind of go above the line with your brush and drag that color out. And you can see how that will kind of create a rounded effect to these stones so that they don't look flat. We're trying to make everything look three-dimensional, and you can see the mix of color in here. That's because we added two colors when we inked them up. So I'm just kind of following these lines. Just carefully do this. And it also creates a highlight at the top, which also makes your stones look rounded. And just kind of work your way up here. If you feel like you're getting too much color onto your brush, just clean it off. Just clean it off and pinch it off and then start again. Always leave a highlight at the very top, so never bring that color all the way to the top. Just kind of follow those lines and leave that highlight at the top. I'm always amazed by how this changes when I add the water. It's such a simple flat image, and then when you add the water to it, it's just kind of like magic. It just creates this three-dimensional image, and just so fun. So important to leave that highlight on there. Don't forget to do that. Never color anything in solid from line to line. It's going to be flat every time. Okay, so our rocks are looking pretty good. So let's just dip our brush now, clean it off, and pull out some of this green from the grass. And this is going to create the top of our hill. So where our little stones stop, we've got a little barrier here. Okay, so let's go on to the next step, and that is to add some grasses in. So I'm going to use this little tiny grass and the large grass too. So the large grass is going to be more for the foreground, and the smaller grass as we go back. So let's just ink this up, and I'm using that same green, so number 249. And remember, when you're doing the grasses, you wanna walk it. So you want to be sure to stamp it several times. And you know, with watercolor, and especially these types of illustrations in your Bible, it's just the idea of things. So you don't need to cover every square inch with grass, even though we know this is a grassy hill. We're giving that impression just by putting a few blades of grass by each rock. We can clearly see that. So we're just giving the idea that this is a grassy hill. So you can see I'm inking and stamping several times. And as we get to the bottom of the hill, I'm kind of stamping up a little bit to show that that grass is a little bit taller. And then I'm going to ink just the tops of this and sort of create this tall grass here in the front. So we never have to use the whole stamp. You know, when you're using a marker, you can ink the stamp just the areas that you want. So it gives you a lot of flexibility. So I'm going to dip my brush, pinch it off now, and I'm going to add water now to my grass that I just stamped. And the same goes for this. So if you feel like you're getting too much color and it's getting too dark here, just clean your brush off, pinch it off, make sure you get the majority of the water off, and then start again. And just kind of work your way down. So fun. And not hard. You know, it's not hard because we're using the same stamps over and over again. And you'll get really good at this little grass. You'll get really good at the vines because we stamp them all the time. We just use the same ones over and over again. And that creates practice, and practice makes perfect. It really does. Even a simple project, the more that you practice at it, the better you're going to get. Nothing is ever foolproof, especially when it comes to techniques like this. We make them as easy as we can, but you'll be surprised if you just work at it, how good you're going to get. Even if you think you're not an artist, you can totally do this. Okay, so we've got our grasses in. We're starting to take shape here. So we're going to add a little more green. So this will give us a little more depth to our background. And this is a very bright green. So I'm just going to take a little bit of it and just brush it in. Just a little bit here and there. There's no right or wrong way to do this. Just kind of put it wherever. Remember, you don't have to color every single inch of this margin. We're just showing the idea. And I think sometimes simple things are harder. Not to overdo things and kind of to know where to stop. I hear that a lot. I'm not quite sure where to stop. It's always better to stop before you think you're finished rather than to overwork something. And it's amazing how you come back to it the next day and it looks totally different. Okay, so I am working my way down here. Got my green in. And that's kind of adding a lot. That's adding a lot more dimension here. You can add another color green too. Depends on how simple you want to make it. And it's amazing how different these things look every time too. Okay, so we've got that done. I'm going to add a little of this green now to my palette so I can kind of define this hill back here. Just kind of clean it up like that. And we can add a little of this green onto the stones too. So I'm going to add another green to my palette and brush in this background. So you can see that the hill kind of ends here and the path goes over the top, but we want to kind of see something in the background as well. And this is optional. You don't really need to do this next step, only if you want to. So I'm just putting in a little hill here and just brushing it in. And maybe another one just back here. And I'm kind of leaving a little space between this one and the other one. And I'm going to make this one in the front just a little bit darker. So it looks like that other one is really, really faded. Okay, so we're going to let that dry just for a little bit, and we'll keep going on here onto the path. So we're going to add now some little flowers. So these little guys, we're going to start with the largest ones in the front, and then we're going to do the smaller ones that go into the back. So they're both just little sets of dots that make great little wildflowers, and they just work great. So I'm just going to ink a few of these and just add some to the tops of the grass. So you just want to kind of stamp it multiple times. And these are more towards the foreground, so they're much larger than the other ones. And then as we go back, we can do the smaller ones. And again, we're just jumping this around. And you can see I'm using a darker color, so I'm using this dark blue, the 565, and that's because I'm stamping over the top of the grass, so I want to make sure that it shows up. So when I'm stamping over this much color, I don't want to have, a bright pink or a yellow, because that's just not going to show up at all. So a darker, more saturated color is going to work much better. And now I am just dabbing, so softening what I just stamped. So just like this, and then back in here, doing the same thing. So always make sure to leave some white spaces. Be careful not to get too much water. That's really the learning curve with this technique, is how to manage the water, not to get too much, but to get enough. And that just takes a little practice. Okay, that looks good. We are making progress here. So I'm going to take a little of that blue now and just add it to the rocks. And if you look at rocks, especially, in the distance, they have lots of different colors on them. So it's kind of like we're adding a little reflection onto here. So we're sort of mirroring these colors that we've just used. And all these things just work together to make these illustrations look more three-dimensional. So just a little bit more down in here. And you can see I'm not being careful about this at all. Just adding a little more color. Okay, so let's keep going. Let's add our long stem flower here. And you can see how long this stem is. So here again is an example of using just the part of the stamp that we want. So we can either use just a short amount of this, or we can draw our own stem in. And sometimes, with a space like this where it's a little more crowded, it's easier just to do the blooms. So I'll show you what I mean by that. You can do one at a time. You can do both. And just kind of putting these in just randomly here and there. And these are bigger blooms, so we don't want to put them too far in the back. We want to keep them mostly up front because they are larger blooms. And so I'm just touching them with my brush. And then I'm going to use the fine point of my marker and just draw the stems in. And you could add just a few more little blades of grass too. Maybe some longer ones that might grow in the front. You can add details like this and then add water to them too, because it's all the same ink. Okay, we are making progress here. So let's continue on and let's add some color now to the sky area. So all of this up in here, we're just going to add a little of this blue. Just the idea of it. And let's put a little darker color in here. Okay, so let's continue on with the front part of this, and I think in this case it would be really fun to add a little stream kind of going by. So let's do that, and we can do that with the blue. And remember, just the idea of things. So let's just kind of bring it through here like this, just kind of down at the bottom. And you can just kind of end this wherever you want to. And then let's bring this, this little path kind of around this direction. And we can add some grass in the front of this as soon as this dries. So let's add one more detail to the sky. We can do that just by adding a little more color in here. So let that light color dry and then just add a little more into the sky. That'll kind of make it a little more interesting. Okay, so let's continue on down here. So we've got our water and it's pretty dry now, so we can just continue on. And we're going to take the large grass and the small, and we're just going to kind of follow the line of this water. Start out with the grass, the small, and we're just going to kind of turn the path. And then just kind of walk it along the water. And let's use a little of this tall grass as well. Remember to just always remember to stamp everything multiple times. That's so important to do that. That's how we get that watercolor effect. Okay, that looks pretty good. So I'm just going to add a little more color to this path from my palette. So I've got some sepia on here and some blue, and I just need to get a little color in here. Okay, so let's continue on with this theme of the flowers, and we can put a few of these in the foreground. Just like this. And then just touch it with your brush. And just brush this color all the way down. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's add just another detail in here. So some of these tall flowers, again, lilies. And we're just going to ink a couple of these blooms and just stamp them in here. And maybe just one more. Dip my brush and soften that color. And then I'll just add my own stamps in here. And that is about finished. We are about finished with this project. And I will be back to do the second side. So we're finished with part 1, and we'll go on and do part 2 in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it so much. Please give me a thumbs up if you like this video, and I will see you all next time.